Good evening, I'm political editor Dennis Welch. This is Politics Unplugged, and tonight it is all about the 2020 election. In just moments, I will talk to the man who will be one of the main players in Arizona politics this go-around. Former NASA astronaut and Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Mark Kelly is standing by. But first, let's give you a quick look at what the Arizona election calendar will look like in 2020.
The first votes of any election cycle in the presidential year are the presidential primaries. And with Iowa and New Hampshire in the books, the calendar shifts to March, where Arizona will come into play. A week after Super Tuesday, Arizona will hold its presidential preference election, which is our version of the presidential primary.
The Democrats are the only party holding a presidential preference election, so you have to be registered as a Democrat in order to participate. Folks can check their voter registration status at my.arizona.vote, and they can update their status at servicearizona.com to register as a Democrat if they would like to participate.
Even though the field has narrowed considerably, Arizona Democrats will have 18 candidates to choose from during the March 17th contest. Maricopa County officials have promised things will go much smoother than in 2016, when lines were hours long. The county's plan includes opening nearly 220 polling locations, 160 more than the 60 polling stations opened 4 years ago. The next time Arizona votes is August 4th for the primary elections. This is where the Republican and Democratic candidates will be chosen for races like the U.S. Senate.
I've traveled many miles to stand with you here today. I think over 22 million of them.
I don't play games with usual politics. I don't campaign one way and then vote another.
Our 9 congressional seats and the entire state legislature. That leads us to General Election Day, November 3rd, 2020.
The news is I'll also be spending a lot of time here because the road to the White House runs right through Arizona.
And get ready, because regardless of nominees, this is expected to be one of the most expensive elections of all time.
I'll just list you a bunch of races that are dead even. Arizona, Nevada, Tennessee, Montana, all of them too close to call, and every one of them like a knife fight in an alley.
Democratic Senate candidate Mark Kelly has already raised $20 million for this election cycle. That's more than any Senate candidate in the entire country. And we still have roughly 7.5 months to go until Election Day.
And that brings me to my main guest this week, Democratic Senate candidate Mark Kelly. Very much welcome to Politics Unplugged. Thanks for taking some time to be here, sir.
Thank you for having me on, Dennis.
All right, and let's jump right in here. A lot of the focus so far this year has been on President Trump's impeachment trial. He was, of course, acquitted of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress charges. Republican Senator Martha McSally has run attack ads against you, labeling you as too liberal for Arizona because of your support for President Trump's impeachment. I guess my first question for you is to explain to our viewers is why you supported convicting this president and his eventual removal from office.
Yeah, it's the way I would have voted. Before going in the U.S. Navy, where I served for 25 years, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. President did that as well. Senator McSally did that. And when a President of the United States has a conversation and tries to enlist some help from a foreign government to win his next election, you know, I think that's not who we are as a nation. And we're a country of laws, and the rule of law matters. And when I looked at all the evidence presented and the testimony in the House of Representatives and what the president had said and the information that was publicly available, thought the appropriate thing to do if I was in that situation would have to vote to convict him.
And that's a very serious vote that you have to take, talking about, upending, a duly elected president of the United States. Was there any thought given to maybe that this did not rise to the level of conviction?
Thought about it. But at the end of the day, the appropriate thing would have been to vote yes on both of those articles.
Okay, I want to play now. I want to go to a soundbite here of the president here talking about the support for Martha McSally here.
I hear we're doing well in Arizona, huh? It's going good, yeah? I think so. I think I saw a poll that was very good. For me, I think we have to make sure Martha's going to do, I think Martha's going to do good. But we have some states that are going to be not easy, but Arizona's been great.
Now, of course, that soundbite was from the day after he was acquitted, where he gave a pretty long speech there, on the White House grounds. I want to talk to you. You're facing, obviously, expected to face Senator McSally. How do you expect to go up against McSally when it seems like you're also going to be running against Trump here as well?
Well, I'm a public servant. I served in the Navy for 25 years, 15 years at NASA as well. I'm an engineer, combat pilot. I feel I have a unique set of experiences I can bring to the United States Senate. I've spent the last year traveling across the state, all 15 counties, in the process of doing that again. I'm meeting people where they live and work and listening to the issues that they're facing with their families, things like price of prescription drugs, being able to get health care, being able to keep health care if they get sick, if they have a pre-existing condition. Now, these are things that this president and Senator McSally have not supported in Washington, D.C. And folks want change. I think they want independence. They want people that are independent from corporate PACs and corporations and their political parties. And change is good. And I think we need some change this election cycle.
Okay, now obviously you've raised a lot of money. We've talked about the $20 million you raised because you're going to have to spend a lot of money in this race. You're going to be facing well-funded challengers. She hasn't raised quite as much as you, but you're also, again, facing that president of the United States. Now, they're already running attack ads against you. Now, given the fact that you responded by this by saying, I believe, quote, that this is the same negative attacks Arizona has rejected before. I want to ask you then, does that mean that you moving forward that you're going to swear off your campaign any type of negative attack ads from your campaign or your surrogates?
Well, let me start off by saying, after serving in the United States Senate for over a year now, Senator McSally had nothing positive to say about her service. I mean, what was accomplished in that year? The first ad is a negative ad against me, and we're already living in a hyper-partisan, divisive time. She often talks about how we have to move away from that. So what I saw in this first ad is just more of the same as was done last cycle against Senator Sinema. And I hope that's not who we are as a state, as a nation, that we can focus on the positive things. My focus is going to be that I think I can be, and I will be, independent from political parties and corporations. And if elected, I'm going to be doing the work for Arizona in Washington, D.C.
Okay, again, though, just to be clear, is your campaign swearing off negative attack ads? Or would you like to announce negative attack ads from your surrogates as we move along into this campaign?
So we haven't run an ad on TV yet.
Sure.
We're not there yet. My goal is to get my message out about my service, about my background. My parents were both police officers. I served in the Navy for 25 years. I think folks need to get to know me and what I've done. If elected to the United States Senate, I'll be the only person with a graduate degree in engineering in the Senate. And I think that's a good thing. So it's going to be more of that. Our long-term, strategic plan, we haven't figured that out yet. And it always depends on what Senator McSally decides to do.
Okay, let's move on now. Let's talk a little bit about former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly. Now, he unleashed on President Trump this past week. The Atlantic reports that General Kelly spoke in defense of Lieutenant Governor Alexander Vindman for raising concerns about President Trump's July call to Ukraine's president. Kelly said Vindman did the right thing when he reported Trump's controversial call. Vindman, a key witness in the impeachment inquiry, was fired as White House National Security aide this past week. Now, I have to ask you, you are a veteran. How do you feel about the president's actions in this case, this coming after that impeachment trial in the Senate?
I don't agree that he should get fired for doing his job. I mean, that's clear. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman is a veteran, Purple Heart winner, served in the United States Army for a long period of time, was trying to do the right thing. I always tell my folks, and I've done this when I was the commander of the space shuttle, 2 different times as a pilot of the space shuttle. Tell me when you don't think I'm doing the right thing, right? I need people around me that are going to tell me when they think that maybe we're going in the wrong direction. A president needs that as well. So I strongly disagree with him being fired. At the same time, you also have to consider that the White House has to build his team, and at some time you would have to let people go. I don't think this is that circumstance.
So do you think this is another abuse of power by the president? And if you do, as a senator, how would you hold this president accountable after an impeachment trial is already at him?
Well, it's obviously difficult to hold this president accountable. As a nation, we need to move on beyond this. We have an election coming up in 2020. There are major issues that Arizonans are facing that this Congress and this White House are not effectively dealing with, like price of prescription medication, the price of education. You know, we've seen over the last couple decades the price of those things go up, and housing, and often for a lot of individuals, their wages haven't risen in a generation. We need an economy that works for everybody, not just the small percentage at the top.
Yeah, and what are you, what are you planning to do? Let's talk about raising wages. I mean, is this something, do you support the federal, raising the federal minimum wage? Do you support those types of initiatives? If not, what do you propose?
Yes, I think minimum wage is important. Often we've got to look, at the area. Sometimes you'll see local minimum wages. We need more better paying jobs, not just minimum wage jobs. So we need to invest. We have a climate issue, that we face. As we address that issue, if we do it in a smart way, if we invest in research and development and technology, we can create good paying jobs here in Arizona.
I just want to be clear, the minimum wage, you do support raising the federal minimum wage then?
I support a federal minimum wage.
And what would that be?
Well, I don't have specifics of what that number would be.
But it would be an increase. You would want that?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit now about like the primaries here, the early primaries that are coming here to Arizona here pretty quickly. And we are still in the early stages of that presidential primary. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders narrowly won New Hampshire. Sanders and former Mayor Pete Buttigieg are neck and neck in the delegate count. Eventual winner will need over 1,900 delegates to secure the 2020 Democratic nomination for president. Are you supporting right now anybody in that Democratic primary right now? You're throwing your support behind anyone?
Not specifically, no.
Is there anybody that you will be supporting, and will you be supporting the eventual nominee no matter who it is?
Well, we'll have to see who the nominee is. Okay. But I think I made it clear that the trajectory that our country is on and has been on, and I know a little bit about trajectories, from flying the space shuttle.
You know more about trajectory than I do.
I think it's kind of unsustainable, and I think we need a different path. So I'm looking forward to seeing who is going to win those 1,900 delegates to get the nomination. It's starting to be pretty clear that it's going to take some time to get there. So this process is going to go on for a while. And I'm looking forward to finding, and hopefully we'll find the best candidate that can be on the ballot in November.
Well, here's one of the leaders right now, is Bernie Sanders. I want you to take a listen to some of this sound right here about him.
Who's the Democratic frontrunner, sir?
That's a good question. I would say Bernie looks like he's doing very well.
Why is he surging?
I think people like his message. He's got energy. His people have energy, but they like his message.
This is not the Democratic Party we know of the past. This is a new socialist Democratic Party. And those aren't my words. That's what AOC calls herself. Same as Bernie Sanders. And that's probably where they're going to end up in the nomination.
Bernie Sanders wins. Are you going to support someone who describes himself as a democratic socialist?
Well, he's going to win first. And when we get there, we'll see, how is this campaign conducted? And at some point in the future, I'll make a decision.
But philosophically, on philosophical grounds, democratic socialist and Mark Kelly, where are you?
I'm a capitalist. I'm somebody who started a small business. I believe in capitalism. I also believe in independence. I think part of the problem we have with our politics is we've gotten so polarized. We've got folks, too far on the right, too far on the left. Nobody working together. I want to get back to a point here, especially in Arizona, what John McCain and others have represented. Being able to work across the aisle in an independent way to do what's right for Arizonans.
All right, and speaking of capitalists, obviously Michael Bloomberg is making some inroads right now. He's running this kind of unconventional campaign. He's focusing on Super Tuesday right now. Is he somebody that you can support? I mean, given what we're learning now in the past several days, there's some leaked audio, some controversial audio that some consider racist comments he's making when he defended his controversial program of the stop and frisk while he was mayor of New York. Is this somebody you could get behind?
Well, there are a lot of folks that I can support. I've met Mayor Bloomberg just once or twice. I don't know him incredibly well. I haven't looked or listened to those audio recordings. And we've got just over a month until the presidential preference election here in Arizona, so a lot can happen between now and then.
Sounds like you're not going to be campaigning for anybody here ahead of that presidential preference election here.
I've got to focus on Arizona in this race. We've got a lot going on. We're working hard. I'm going through all 15 counties again. I've been to all corners of the state listening to individuals about the problems that Washington, D.C. and the current United States Senator, who I'm running against, Senator McSally, that the issues that she is not addressing for individuals here in Arizona. And I want to come back to the ad. You know, if at this point, after over a year, you can't come up with one positive thing, I think it's maybe time for some change.
All right, we're going to have to end it right there. That's all the time we have for that segment. Mark Kelly, Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate. Thank you very much. And the big question going into 2020 is how big of a role Arizona will play in the presidential election. Several political experts think the race for the White House could pivot on the result here in Arizona. Sean McLaughlin is at the touchscreen to explain.
Thanks, Dennis. I'll leave it to you and the political experts to figure out the exact role Arizona may play. But when it comes to math and you look at the Electoral College votes from 2016, Arizona could definitely be kind of the tiebreaker on 2020, the election night. Here's a couple of scenarios. Say Pennsylvania, that went Republican with its 20 electoral votes, flipped to blue. How about Wisconsin? 10 electoral votes. Now you flip Arizona. Look at that. That puts the Democratic nominee ahead of the president, 271 to 264. Now let's flip them back and let's give you another scenario. Let's say Pennsylvania, with its 20 electoral votes, stayed Republican in 2020. But Michigan and Wisconsin both flipped. You add a flip here in Arizona, and look at the chaos in the Electoral College. 268 for the president, 267 for the Democratic nominee, no one topping 270. Talk about your election night chaos. It could all come down to the Grand Canyon State here in November in 2020. Dennis?
Thanks, Sean. And now that we've covered Arizona's role in the national stage in 2020, let's get local. We're talking about the big races here in the state legislature when Politics Unplugged returns. And as we continue this 2020 election preview, we're shifting to the state legislature, where gains by the Democrats in 2018 have some wondering if the balance of power at the state's capital is up for grabs. Now, here is how things stand at the moment. Republicans have a 4-seat advantage in the state Senate, meaning 2 seats would have to flip blue just to create a tie in the chamber. The Arizona House is where things are getting very interesting, though. The GOP holding a 2-seat advantage, meaning 1 seat flips, and it's a split chamber. 2 seats turn blue, and we have a Democratic-controlled chamber at the state capitol for the first time since the Senate was held by Dems back in 1992. Now, here are 2 state Senate races, and there are 2 Senate races and 2 House races that may be in play this year. Republican Senator Sylvia Allen from Snowflake and Republican Senator Kate Brophy-McGee from Phoenix. Now, Republican Representative Anthony Kern from Glendale and Republican Representative Jeff Weniger in Chandler. A couple of seats there that are open in the House. Now, here to talk about what all this could mean for the state legislature is Jim Small with the Arizona Mirror. Thanks for joining us here again. You've been looking over a lot of this. What are the chances that the Dems right now could take control of one or both of these chambers?
Well, I mean, I think definitely the House, with it being such a narrow margin and really the Democrats only having to, flip 1 seat to get to a tie and 2 seats to get to the win. I think that's where a lot of the priority is at the moment. I think that they look at what happened in 2018 and they see the gains that they made as something that they can build on and something that they can take forward, especially into a presidential year when turnout is going to be higher naturally, I think, among Democrats than it typically is, and among Dem-leaning independents than it usually is in a midterm year. Obviously, we saw a huge wave of turnout, a massive turnout in 2018 that was surprised a lot of people. I think the key for Democrats is to focus on those races that they have identified. I mean, there's those 2, I think, in the Senate and in the House, and a couple others that are kind of on the periphery that are in the mix that they're looking at, and they see places where they can go out and try to win those seats. But I think it's also important to remember that the Democrats picked up seats in 2018, right? And they've got to play defense on a couple of seats in those Republican districts.
Yeah, in a presidential, Trump changes the entire dynamic. Let's focus a little bit here on the Senate. We've got Sylvia Allen, she's a senator from Snowflake, longtime lawmaker. She's quite vulnerable. What do you think about her chances winning her seat up there?
Yeah, I mean, this a district that has traditionally been a Republican district. It spans from kind of the Payson area and Snowflake all the way up to Flagstaff. So it's got a wide range of kind of geography and a wide range of political constituencies, right? I mean, Flagstaff is typically a more liberal college city. The eastern part of that district tends to be more conservative. Sylvia Allen narrowly won in 2018. She was one of the targets from Democrats that year. She only won by by a really small margin, a lot less than I think people thought. I think the big wild card in that race is whether there's going to be, I think that there's a independent who's running, and so if that person stays in the race, then I think that really throws off the calculations for Democrats.
The final question here for the segment, again, sticking with the Senate, because that's where I think Dems have the biggest chances for power to flip there is over in the Senate. Kate Brophy-McGee. Now, this is a rematch from 2018. She's facing a former teacher in there who she beat less than 300 votes.
Yeah.
What's going to happen there? It seems like just the demographics of that area are changing there in Phoenix.
Yeah, and that's always been a competitive district, been a district where Democrats have always been able to at least get one seat, usually in the House. They now control both House seats, and their goal is to continue to make inroads into that Senate seat. I mean, 300 votes is a razor-thin margin. That is just a matter of, trying to get a few extra neighborhoods to turn out a little bit differently. That's going to be a race where we're going to see untold sums of money pouring into it.
All right, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much, Jim Small with the Arizona Mirror. Thanks again for stopping by here and talking to us. And I'm bringing in our panel next with our reaction to the interview with Democratic Senate candidate Mark Kelly. That's next on Politics Unplugged. And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It's time to talk it out with our political consultants, Republican Marcus DelArtino and Democrat Joe Wolf. Thank you guys for being here. I want to start with you. You're the Democrat here at the table. Thoughts on Mark Kelly's interview here, and do you think he's got a legitimate shot at winning this year?
Absolutely. He was incredibly disciplined, on message. I mean, he's not making errors either in his interview or in his campaign. He's raising a ton of money. He's clearly spending it better than Martha is. So, yes, I absolutely think he'll win.
Marcus?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a contender. You can't deny it. You've got to be realistic about this situation. He's raising buckets of money. I mean, frankly, from his numbers, he could be a presidential contender with the amount of money that he's raised. He's on message. You saw his answer about, are you going to back the presidential nominee? Smart move on his part. It's going to be a race.
Let's play translator. Let's translate political speech into plain English. When I did ask him if he was going to support Bernie Sanders if he won the nomination, didn't seem like he was that hot on that idea.
He's going to run his own race, Dennis, which is the smart thing to do. He's got to worry about his race, and he doesn't want to be tied down by in presidential candidate.
And what did you take from that question? I mean, it doesn't sound like he is going to be backing Bernie Sanders at all.
No, absolutely. I mean, he answered it, although he didn't answer it right. I mean, those of us paying attention, it was very clear. He's not backing Sanders. He's focused on his own race. Sinema laid out a very nice template last cycle, and he's going to follow that to a T.
And why wouldn't you want to do that? Do you think that hurts him here in Arizona if someone like Sanders does win the nomination?
I don't know if exactly will hurt him. At the end of the day, it's a distraction. It's a variable that he doesn't need to introduce into the equation. He's clearly running a very disciplined, very smart, data-driven campaign. Why introduce uncertainty to that?
And let's be realistic. Sanders' platform doesn't exactly fit into Arizona's electorate very well. No. So he knows that. Everybody knows that, and that's what's going on there.
And, be interested in your thoughts, too, on Martha McSally coming out the gate here. She had just announced her campaign. First ad out the gate. It's a negative ad attacking Mark Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm slightly concerned, because we did the liberal thing before. We called Kyrsten Sinema a liberal. We put her in a pink tutu. We did everything, and it didn't work. So I think it's time that Republicans get a little more creative about their messaging. It's not going to be as easy as just labeling him a liberal, and I think we have to have a better introduction to who Martha McSally is.
And we got about 10 seconds left. Your thoughts on McSally's first ad?
I mean, I think she's clearly trying to pivot somewhat, but it's to the extent that she needs to, away from how she ran a race in 2018. It's probably not going to be enough. I think to Marcus's point, she needs to be a lot more creative.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. And that is all the time we have tonight. Be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.